Hello friends, now we will start with part 3 of the video lecture series dealing with the summary of the book Brain Energy, authored by Dr. Christopher M. Palmer, who gives an insight into the origins of mental disorders and the methods of treating them. Dr. Palmer's theory can usher in potent therapeutic interventions for pervasive psychiatric conditions for which the standard pharmaceutical approaches have proven minimally effective. In the first part of the lecture series, we talked about mitochondria, the most important organelle in the cell. We talked about the role that the mitochondria play in our mental and metabolic health, and also we talked about the functions of mitochondria. In the second part of the lecture series, we talked about how the mental disorders are a result of the energy imbalance in the brain. We talked about how overactive cell functions, underactive cell functions, absent cell functions, developmental abnormalities, or problems in cell maintenance, they can all lead to mental disorders. In the third part of the lecture series, we talked about certain contributing causes to mitochondrial impairment and certain contributing causes to mental and metabolic health, which included genetics and epigenetics, chemical imbalances, neurotransmitters, and certain hormones like insulin. In the fourth part of the lecture series, we talked about other hormones like cortisol, thyroid, estrogen, etc., which play a role in mitochondrial health and also affect the mental as well as the metabolic health. We also talked about the role of psychiatric medications, how the psychiatric medications work and the effects that they have on the mitochondria. And we also talked about the role of inflammation and about the feedback mechanism between inflammation and mitochondria. And also we concluded with the role of sleep, light, and circadian rhythms and their relation. We concluded with the role of sleep, light, and circadian rhythms in regulating our metabolism. Now we come to the fifth part of our lecture series, and we are going to start a very important contributing cause to mental and metabolic health, a very important contributing cause which affects mitochondrial function, and this cause is food, fasting, and our gut. Now, what we eat, when we eat, and how much we eat, they all have direct effects on our metabolism and on the mitochondria. So diet has profound effects on our mitochondrial health and on our brain health. And these connections, they go far beyond correlations. They overlap at the level of neural circuits in the brain. So, for example, neural circuits that drive our appetite and feeding behaviors, they have also been directly implicated in addiction to tobacco, alcohol, and heroin. So neural circuits that are driving appetite and feeding behaviors, they also have a role to play in addiction to tobacco, alcohol, and heroin. So same neural circuits for appetite and addiction. And then what is surprising is that neural circuits for loneliness overlap directly with the neural circuits that warn of starvation. So there is overlapping between the neural circuits involved in loneliness and the neural circuits involved in starvation. Now there was a research study, which showed that chronic social isolation in fruit fly led to increased eating and reduced sleep. So chronic social isolation in fruit fly, it led to increased eating and reduced sleep. So we see that loneliness is connected to eating behaviors. Neural circuits related to loneliness, they are overlapping with neural circuits relating to eating behaviors, and they are also overlapping with neural circuits related to sleep. Then another study identified specific GABA and serotonin neural circuits that were directly involved in obesity, anxiety, and depression. So these neurotransmitter neural circuits, they were directly involved in obesity, in causing obesity, anxiety, and depression. So they were directly involved in causing both metabolic and mental disorders. So one neural circuit plays a role in how you feel, that is loneliness, and how much you weigh, that is eating behavior, obesity, etc. So to conclude, the mental health and metabolic health. Mental is affecting metabolic and metabolic is affecting mental. So there is a feedback mechanism between mental health and metabolic health. Now about vitamins and nutrients. Now we know that vitamins play an important role in our metabolism, and nutrients, other nutrients also play a very important role. Now, several vitamin deficiencies are known to cause mental and neurological disorders. Deficiency of vitamins like thiamine, that is vitamin B1, folate, that is vitamin B9, B12, that is also known as cyanocobalamin. So, and these are all B complex vitamins. So B complex vitamins, they include total of 8 vitamins. And these B complex vitamins, they are required for metabolism of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats in our body. And these B complex vitamins are also involved in myelin synthesis. We know that myelin is the protective covering for the neurons in the axon of the neurons, and they protect the neurons. They prevent the loss of nerve, they prevent the loss of message, they promote nerve impulse transmission. So B complex vitamins are required for myelin synthesis. Now when there is a deficiency of these B complex vitamins, then there is reduced myelin synthesis, and this reduced myelin synthesis or demyelination, it can cause symptoms like convulsion, seizures, epilepsy, and sleeplessness. So it can cause all these symptoms like convulsions, seizures. Seizures are abnormal electric activity in the brain. And then epilepsy and sleeplessness. All these symptoms, they can be caused by reduced myelin synthesis. Now what are convulsions? Convulsions is a medical condition that causes the body's muscles to contract and relax rapidly and repeatedly, resulting in uncontrolled shaking. So convulsions can be called as uncontrolled shaking. When the body's muscles are contracting and relaxing repeatedly or rapidly, that is convulsion. So this is a symptom of demyelination. Demyelination can cause convulsions. And now what are the sources of B complex vitamins? We have just seen that B complex vitamins are required for myelin synthesis. Now what are the sources of these B complex vitamins? Milk products like curd, eggs, cereals, including whole grains, and the fungus yeast. So whole grains, cereals, milk, eggs, curd, etc. are sources of vitamin B complex vitamins. Now we come to certain important B complex vitamins. One of them is vitamin B1. Now thiamine or vitamin B1, it helps in converting of glucose into energy. So it helps convert glucose into energy, including myelin synthesis. So vitamin B1 also helps in myelin synthesis for proper nerve impulse transmission. It helps convert glucose into energy. So thiamine, vitamin B1 is involved in glucose metabolism. Then deficiency of vitamin B1, it can cause the disease called beriberi. Now, beriberi disease is also of two types. One is dry beriberi. Dry beriberi can include loss of sensation in the hands and legs. It can cause muscle weakness. It can cause inflammation in the neurons. And wet beriberi, it can cause weakness of the heart muscles. Wet beriberi can also cause edema or leakage of blood from blood vessels. And it can cause weakness of heart muscles as well as heart failure. So this was about vitamin B1 or thiamine. Then we come to vitamin B9 or folate. Vitamin B9 is essential for the maturation of RBC. So we know that RBCs, they are non-nucleated. RBCs, they evolve from initially when they are made, they have a nucleus, and the primitive RBCs which are having a nucleus, they are known as macrocytes. These include proerythroblast and erythroblast, and these macrocytes, when they mature, they become non-nucleated and biconcave in nature. And these are known as erythrocytes. And these are the mature RBCs. So, vitamin B9 or folate, it is involved in maturation of the RBCs. It helps in DNA synthesis. It helps in promoting growth and cell division. Now, in the initial days of pregnancy, giving vitamin B9 helps in the development of brain and spinal cord of the fetus. And deficiency of vitamin B9, it can cause macrocytic anemia. It means that if B9 is deficient, then RBCs will not mature. RBCs will remain in their primitive form called macrocytes. And these macrocytes have a shorter lifespan than mature RBCs. So because of this, there will be an RBC deficiency. So this is known as macrocytic anemia. Then we come to another important vitamin, that is vitamin B3, niacin. Now, there is an amino acid known as tryptophan, which is involved in the formation of niacin. This amino acid, tryptophan, it is involved in the formation of vitamin B3. And it is also involved in the formation of a coenzyme. Now, vitamin B3 is involved in the formation of a coenzyme known as NAD, nicotine adenine dinucleotide. So NAD is a nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. So this coenzyme NAD, vitamin B3 or niacin is involved in the production of this coenzyme. And this NAD coenzyme is very crucial for mitochondrial health. Now, vitamin B3 or niacin, tryptophan and amino acid is involved in the formation of niacin. And tryptophan is an essential amino acid, which means that this amino acid is needed from an outside food source. The body does not manufacture it itself. And if our diet lacks tryptophan, then it is going to cause niacin deficiency. It is going to cause deficiency of vitamin B3, and which causes a disease called pellagra. And pellagra causes the 4D symptoms, that is dermatitis, which means rough skin, rashes on the skin being hypersensitive to sunlight, then dementia, that is memory loss, diarrhea, and death. So these three symptoms can occur because of deficiency of B3, and severe cases of deficiency can also result in death. Now we come to another important vitamin, that is vitamin B12, which is also known as cyanocobalamin. Now this is a unique vitamin that is synthesized only by microorganisms like bacteria in the large intestine. So this vitamin is synthesized by microorganisms like bacteria in our large intestine, and it is only found in the food of animal origin like milk, curd, eggs and fish. So it is only found in the food of animal origin, and it is the unique vitamin that is synthesized by the microbes like bacteria in our large intestine. And what are the functions of vitamin B12? It is involved in the maturation of RBC, changing of macrocytes into mature non-nucleated biconcave RBCs. B12 is involved in DNA synthesis and it is also involved in myelin synthesis. Now, deficiency of vitamin B12 can result in a condition known as pernicious anemia. And in this deficiency of vitamin B12 can result in demyelination of nerves. So, damage to the myelin coating in nerves, causing loss of sensation in the hands and feet. Now, B complex deficiency, and B complex includes a group of 8 vitamins in the B group. So, deficiency of all these B complex vitamins can make a person prone to Alzheimer's disease. Now, another vitamin, that is vitamin B6, it is involved in the production of serotonin neurotransmitter. Then, now we just saw that whole grains are a source of vitamin B complex. Now, what are whole grains? Whole grains includes the grain. Now, the grain has got 3 components. It has got an endosperm, a germ, and a bran. Now, normally when we eat grains, we eat only the endosperm. But when we eat the germ and the bran along with the endosperm, then it becomes a whole grain. So, when the grains are eaten along with their outer covering, then they form whole grains, and these whole grains, this outer covering of grains, they are rich in essential nutrients. They are rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids. They are rich in omega-3 and omega-6, which are polyunsaturated fatty acids. And these polyunsaturated fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-6, they are a sign of good cholesterol. They form the HDL cholesterol. Now, if a person is deficient in these vitamins, they will have impaired energy production within their mitochondria. So, if there is vitamin deficiency, then energy production in mitochondria may become impaired. And symptoms of vitamin deficiency can also include certain symptoms like mental symptoms like depression, apathy, loss of appetite, confusion, memory impairment, sleep disturbance, fatigue, hallucinations, and delusions. Now we come to lipids. Now lipids, the lipids include fat, oil, and cholesterol. Now fat tissue is also known as adipose tissue, and the fat cells are also known as adipocytes. Now lipid, what are the functions of lipid? One is formation of myelin sheath. The myelin sheath which covers the axon. Lipid plays a role in formation of this myelin sheath. Second, we know that cholesterol is also a form of lipid, and cholesterol is involved in the formation of cell membrane of the cell. Then cholesterol is also involved in the formation of bile salts. Now, cholesterol is also, the liver converts fat, and the liver emulsifies or breaks down the fats using cholesterol and bile salts. Cholesterol is also involved in the formation of steroid hormones like estrogen and progesterone, and cholesterol is also involved in the formation of vitamin D. Then lipids are involved in the absorption of the fat soluble vitamins. Lipids are involved in the absorption of fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A, D, E, and K in the body. Now about digestion of fat. Now what is fat? Fat is a triglyceride. It is an ester. It is an ester of 3 molecules of fatty acid and 1 molecule of glycerol. So when these combine, they form an ester, which is the fat. So fat is emulsified or broken down by the bile salts. The fat is broken down or emulsified with the help of bile salts. And how are these bile salts produced? These bile salts are produced by the cells in the liver with the help of cholesterol. So the liver cells, they produce cholesterol, they produce bile salts. They produce bile salts with the help of cholesterol. Now the liver cells are producing bile salts using cholesterol. These bile salts are emulsifying the fats, and after the emulsification of fats by the liver cells, then finally the digestion of fats into fatty acids and glycerol takes place by a fat digesting enzyme known as lipase. So this is the next stage, the final stage in the digestion of fat into fatty acids and glycerol by the fat digesting enzyme known as lipase. Now fats are classified into two types, saturated fat and unsaturated fat. Now saturated fats have single bonds between the different carbon atoms. They have single bonds. Now there are hydrogen atoms also attached in this carbon atom chain. So when there are single bonds between the different carbon atoms, then it is a saturated fat. And in case of unsaturated fat, there are double bonds between the carbon atoms. Now unsaturated fat can be polyunsaturated fatty acid or monounsaturated fatty acids. So polyunsaturated fatty acids includes more than one double bond between carbon atoms, and the monounsaturated fatty acids includes a single double bond between the carbon atoms. Now we come to saturated fat. Now Vanaspati ghee is a source of saturated fat. Then butyric acid is also a source of saturated fat. Now saturated fat are mainly obtained from animal food source. These fats have high melting point and they are solid at room temperature. Examples of saturated fat include milk, butter, ghee and meat. And certain plant food sources also give saturated fat. They are also a source of saturated fat, and these plant food sources include coconut oil and palm oil. Now we come to unsaturated fats. The first is polyunsaturated fatty acids. So these are having more than one double bond. Now examples of polyunsaturated fatty acids include sunflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil, etc. Then there are certain essential polyunsaturated fatty acids. They are essential because they cannot be manufactured by our body, and we need to get them from an outside food source. So these are two essential polyunsaturated fatty acids. One is the omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids, in which the double bond starts from the double bond is present on the third carbon atom. It starts from the third carbon atom. And another is the omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acid, in which the double bond starts from the sixth carbon atom. Double bond is present at the sixth carbon atom. Now omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid. Example of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acid is linolenic acid. And this linolenic acid, it is converted into DHA. It is converted into docosahexaenoic acid by the body. So it is converted by the body into docosahexaenoic acid. And fish is a direct source of DHA. Fish is a direct source of DHA. Then we have omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acid. So example of omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acid is linoleic acid. Then we come to monounsaturated fatty acid. Monounsaturated fatty acid example is oleic acid, which is there in olive oil. So this is an example of monounsaturated fatty acid. Now we'll just revise it in brief. Unsaturated hydrocarbons are of two types: polyunsaturated fatty acids and monounsaturated fatty acids. In polyunsaturated fatty acids, examples include sunflower, soybean oil, and corn oil. And two essential polyunsaturated fatty acids include omega-3 and omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. These are essential fatty acids because they need to be got from an outside food source. In omega-3, the double bond starts from the third carbon atom. In omega-6, the double bond starts from the sixth carbon atom. Example of omega-3 is linolenic acid, which is converted by the body into DHA or docosahexaenoic acid, and fish is a direct source of DHA. Then omega-6 polyunsaturated acid, example is linoleic acid. Then monounsaturated fatty acid, example is oleic acid. In monounsaturated fatty acid, there is only one double bond, while in polyunsaturated fatty acids, there is more than one double bond. Then about the saturated fats. Saturated fats are mainly got from animal food source like milk, butter, ghee, and meat, and they have single bonds between the carbon atoms, and they can also be got from a plant food source like coconut oil and palm oil. Now we talk about trans fat. Now how do we obtain these trans fat? When we know that there is a phenomenon called as hydrogenation of fat. What is hydrogenation of fat? Hydrogenation means when an unsaturated fat, which is having double bonds between the carbon atoms, it is converted into a saturated fat. It is converted into a saturated fat with nickel, and the reaction has nickel as a catalyst. So this unsaturated fat, it is converted into a saturated fat with a chemical reaction in which nickel acts as catalyst. So this is known as hydrogenation of fat. So this is complete hydrogenation. But in some cases, the unsaturated fat, suppose this is the unsaturated fat, it has got two double bonds, and it is converted, there is partial hydrogenation. There is partial hydrogenation of this unsaturated fat, and one of the double bonds is converted into a single bond, but the other double bond is not converted into a single bond. So one of the double bond hydrogen atoms add up to this. I'll make this diagram again. Now we have just seen complete hydrogenation. We will see partial hydrogenation. Suppose this is an unsaturated fat. There are two double bonds. Now partial hydrogenation takes place. Now what happens in partial hydrogenation? One of the double bonds gets converted into single bonds by addition of hydrogen atoms, but the other double bond remains as it is. The other double bond does not get converted into a single bond. So this is known as partial hydrogenation. But in the trans fats, they are produced by partial hydrogenation of fat. They are produced by partial hydrogenation of fat. Now see, this was the unsaturated fat. Now see, carbon has got 4 valencies. So here 3 are filled, there is one hydrogen atom. Again 3 valencies are filled and there is one hydrogen atom here. Again one hydrogen here and again a double bond, so one hydrogen here. Now hydrogenation takes place. What happens after hydrogenation? One double bond is broken, but the other double bond is not broken. But this configuration of the hydrogen atoms change. In this the hydrogen atoms are on the same side of the double bond. But after this chemical reaction, what happens is that one hydrogen atom is here, another comes here. So the configuration changes from cis to trans. The orientation of hydrogen atoms around the double bond, it changes. So this is known as trans fat. It is formed by partial hydrogenation of unsaturated fat. Now what are the benefits? Now trans fat, it has got a greater shelf life. But trans fats, they have been found to be harmful for metabolic health. Now many of the junk foods, many of the highly processed foods, they contain trans fat. Although it has a greater shelf life, but it is harmful for metabolic health. Consumption of trans fat increases cholesterol. It increases the fat deposition in the arteries, also known as atherosclerosis. It restricts the blood flow. It restricts the flow of oxygen-rich blood because the arteries are carrying oxygen-rich blood, and when fat is depositing, then it will restrict the flow of oxygen-rich blood. So it may restrict the blood reaching the heart, and this may lead to death of the affected tissue, and it may lead to heart attack. So ischemia is restricted flow of oxygen-rich blood in the arteries, and myocardial infarction refers to heart attack, that is death of the affected tissue causing a heart attack. Because when oxygen-rich blood is not able to flow to the target tissue, then it may cause the death of the affected tissue and it may cause a heart attack. Now we come to lipoprotein. What are lipoproteins? They are molecular complexes that consist of both lipids and proteins. So lipoproteins, they are molecular complexes that consist of both lipids as well as proteins. And what is their function? Their function is the transport vehicles. They act as the transport vehicles for the lipids in blood. Now examples of lipoprotein are HDL, LDL and VLDL. High density lipoprotein, low density lipoprotein and very low density lipoprotein. Now HDL is good for metabolic health, but LDL and VLDL are not good for metabolic health. Now what happens is HDL, high density cholesterol, they are synthesized in the liver. High density lipoproteins, they are synthesized in the liver, and they transport the lipids and cholesterol from the peripheral tissues in the body back to the liver. And in the liver, they can be used. The high density lipoproteins, they are synthesized in the liver, and they transport the lipid and cholesterol from the peripheral tissues in the body back to the liver. And in the liver, the lipids or cholesterol, they are used for making bile salts, which emulsify the fat. So bile salts break down the fat. So this is about the high density lipoprotein, which is beneficial for metabolism. Why? Because it is transferring the fat and cholesterol from the peripheral parts of the body, from the peripheral tissues. It is transferring them to the liver. And the liver is using the lipids or cholesterol for making of bile salts. And these bile salts are emulsifying the fat. So HDL is coming under good cholesterol. And LDL, what does it do? The LDL is transferring the lipids and cholesterol from the liver to the peripheral tissue. So LDL and VLDL, LDL and VLDL are transporting the cholesterol from the liver to the arteries, or from the liver to the peripheral tissues in the body. And this is going to increase the cholesterol in the peripheral tissues. It is going to increase cholesterol deposition in the arteries, and this may lead to heart attack. So LDL and VLDL are not good for metabolic health. Now we come to fiber. Now fruits, vegetables, whole grains, they are all a source of fiber. Then there is the Mediterranean diet, which includes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, olive oil, etc. And it has been seen that consuming Mediterranean diet is resulting in reduced rates of depression and cognitive impairment. Now, what is the benefit of these fiber-rich foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains? Because fiber is converted by the microbes in the gut into butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid. So, fiber in these fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, it is converted by microbes in the gut into butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid. And this butyrate, it serves as the primary fuel for mitochondria in gut cells. So this butyrate is having a beneficial effect on the mitochondria in gut cells. And it is also playing a role in liver cells. So butyrate is beneficial for mitochondria. So fiber is converted by the gut microbes into butyrate. Now this butyrate is a saturated fat also, and it is a short chain fatty acid, and it is converted. Butyric acid is a saturated fat. Now butyrate is a short chain fatty acid which is converted, which is a primary fuel for mitochondria. It is helping the mitochondria. It is beneficial for the mitochondria in the gut cells, and it is also playing a role in liver cells. So this is beneficial. This is how fiber-rich foods are good for our metabolic and mental health. Now one research group found that butyrate directly changes the mitochondrial function. It changes the mitochondrial efficiency and the mitochondrial fission and fusion. And these changes directly impact insulin resistance, fat accumulation in liver, and overall metabolism. And strong connections exist between the gut and the brain. And butyrate appears to directly play a role in sleep also. Now butyrate is directly playing a role in sleep also. And this mechanism appears to be located in the liver or in the vein going to the liver, which is the portal vein. Now there were certain studies in mice. Researchers, they injected butyrate into the guts of the mice or in their portal vein, and when they injected butyrate, they found that the mice slept around 50 to 70% more. And when this butyrate was injected in other body parts, then nothing happened. Then another research study said that butyrate decreases neuroinflammation in aging mice. So butyrate is reducing inflammation. So it is having a favorable impact on mitochondria. And butyrate, by reducing neuroinflammation in aging mice, might protect against Alzheimer's disease. So these are the beneficial effects of butyrate that is obtained from fiber-rich foods like fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Now we come to insulin. We come to the fact that insulin resistance, it is when the cells are not allowing insulin to get inside them. Insulin resistance is related to mitochondrial as well as mental disorders. Now one study in diabetic rats, it found that high levels of glucose directly impaired mitochondria. So when glucose levels were high, it directly impaired mitochondria. And this was measured by reduced energy production, increased oxidative stress, increased number of reactive oxygen species, reduced antioxidant capacities, and all of this likely damages neurons. So increased levels of glucose impaired mitochondrial function. This was proved by one study. Then another study looked at the cells that line our arteries, that is the endothelial cells in humans, to see how the glucose levels are affecting the mitochondrial function. They found that glucose levels are affecting the function of mitochondria in the cells, in the endothelial cells, that is the cells which line our arteries. Then, although this did not change the baseline energy production, when cells were stressed, so when these cells were stressed, those cells which were exposed to high glucose levels, so those cells which were exposed to high glucose levels, those when these cells were stressed, in the case of stress, when stress happened, then those cells which were exposed to high glucose levels, their ability is reduced. They had impaired ability to produce more energy. So their ability to produce energy reduced. So when there was stress, then the cells which were exposed to high levels of glucose, their energy production decreased, their ability to produce energy decreased. Now, this is a paradox. Why? Because glucose acts as a fuel. Glucose acts as a fuel. But here, more glucose or fuel is leading to lower levels of energy production, lower levels of ATP. Then a study looked at 20 people with diabetes to see what impact high blood glucose had on their mood and brain function. So it tried to see people with diabetes to see what was the impact of high glucose on their metabolism. Now see, there was another study which had just seen that more glucose, high levels of glucose. Now when there was stress, then those cells which were exposed to high levels of glucose, these cells had reduced ability to produce energy. Then another study is looking at 20 people with diabetes to see the effect of high blood glucose on their mood and on their brain function. So what did this study prove? That high glucose was leading to impairment in the processing speed in these people with diabetes. It was causing problems in memory and attention, and also it was causing reduced energy level, it was causing increased sadness, anxiety, etc. So what does all this suggest? It suggests that if people with diabetes who are already metabolically compromised, if the people with diabetes, because these people may have insulin resistance, they may have high levels of glucose, and if these people they overeat comfort foods, if they are consuming more glucose by means of comfort foods, then it might cause them to feel sad and anxious. It might cause them to have cognitive impairments. So this study proves that higher levels of glucose are increasing this is another study which proves that higher levels of glucose are increasing the risk for higher levels of amyloid and brain shrinkage leading to Alzheimer's disease. So could elevated or higher levels of blood glucose account for higher rates of depression and Alzheimer's disease in people with diabetes? Research suggests that this might play a role. So we can see the problems with high levels of glucose. So high levels of glucose are impairing the mitochondrial function. Now this is another feedback loop. Mitochondria are playing a direct role in controlling the glucose levels. Mitochondria are able to sense how much glucose is available. So mitochondria are playing a direct role in controlling the glucose levels. And glucose levels also impact mitochondria. In the previous slides, in the previous parts of the lecture series, we had seen that mitochondria have a direct impact on insulin production, and insulin in turn affects mitochondrial function. Mitochondria sense how much glucose is available or how much glucose is needed. And mitochondrial dysfunction, guys, now insulin production, mitochondria are involved in regulating the production of insulin, and insulin is also affecting the mitochondrial health. So then mitochondria are playing a direct role in controlling the glucose levels, and the glucose levels are also impacting mitochondrial health. Now a study showed that mitochondria in the cells of the VMH stands for ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus. So mitochondria in the cells of the ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus, which is an area of the brain that is known to regulate the glucose levels. This area is regulating the glucose levels. So the mitochondria in the cells of the ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus, they were critical in glucose regulation. See, this study found that mitochondria in the cells of the ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus, an area of brain known to regulate glucose levels throughout the body, were critical in this region. So these cells, they are actually regulating the glucose levels. And how are the glucose levels being regulated? By means of the mitochondria in the cells of the ventromedial nucleus of hypothalamus. Now the fission of the fission of these mitochondria with each other and their levels of reactive oxygen species are directly controlling the glucose levels throughout the body. If mitochondria are not functioning properly, if these mitochondria in the ventromedial nucleus of hypothalamus, if they are not functioning properly, then obviously the glucose regulation will also be off. So the mitochondria in the cells of the ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus, so this is the hypothalamus, and there is a ventromedial nucleus of the hypothalamus. The mitochondria in this region, they regulate the glucose levels throughout the body. So if the mitochondria are not functioning properly, glucose regulation will be off. And when the glucose regulation is off, this may create problems like sadness, anxiety, increased likelihood of developing Alzheimer's disease. Now we come to obesity, which is a major metabolic problem. Now, most people think that it is a problem of overeating. That means people are eating more calories than they are burning. Then the question is, why are the people eating too much? Now, some people who struggle with obesity can eat very little and still they may fail to lose weight. They are eating very little but still they are not losing weight. This is due to the metabolism. For people, now the author gives an example of Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving, people naturally consume a lot. Now thin people, they may feel stuffed even to the next day, because the thin people, they may have a very good metabolism because their body is burning calories very fast. So weight gain does not occur in these people. But in case of obese people, the metabolism is slow. So even if they eat very little, it may accumulate in their body and it may add to their obesity. So why are those who are obese storing so much fat and not burning the fat? Now those who are thin can feel stuffed even to the next day. This drives them to eat less. Now thin people may have their metabolism such that it is burning more calories and their metabolism drives them to eat less, or it may be that their metabolism increases to burn excess calories. Now this is the explanation. The thin people, their metabolism increases to burn the calories. So they are able to burn the calories and it does not cause weight gain. See, one thing is, the author is giving two explanations. One is that they are feeling so stuffed that they eat less. Another explanation the author gives is that their metabolism is increasing, which is burning off all the excess calories that they are consuming. So they go on being thin. But obese people, they don't have the same response. Because obese people, the metabolism is slightly different, and even when these obese people, when they lose weight, then their metabolism goes down, it plummets, and it fights off their efforts to lose weight. It may fight their effort to lose weight, because when they are trying to lose weight, when they are eating very less, their metabolism may just go down. This might affect their daily functioning, and it may fight their efforts to lose weight. So the author is suggesting that there are problems with the metabolism. Thin people may have a better metabolism, which enables them to burn more calories. Even if they eat more, the metabolism is such that it burns off the excess calories and they go on being thin. But in case of obese people, if they try to lose weight, their metabolism may plummet suddenly, and it may fight their efforts to lose weight. Now, another thing is loneliness, anxiety, depression, and sleep. They share some neural circuits with appetite and feeding behaviors. So the neural circuits for loneliness, anxiety, depression, and sleep may overlap with the neural circuits related to appetite or feeding behaviors. Now, what would happen if some of these neural circuits they were hyperexcitable? So if certain these neural circuits relating to loneliness, anxiety, depression, sleep, which are overlapping with the neural circuits related to appetite and feeding behaviors, if these were hyperexcitable, then what would happen? Then that person would feel lonely, depressed, anxious, will have trouble sleeping also, because the neural circuits for sleep and loneliness are overlapping, and will also overeat because the neural circuits for loneliness, sleep, and appetite are overlapping. So both obesity and mental disorders, they are associated with the mitochondrial dysfunction. So both obesity and mental disorders, they are associated with dysfunctioning of mitochondria. And when people have both these disorders, that is, when people have both obesity as well as mental disorders, then they can add to each other. And these conditions can make each other worse. Now we come to a very important concept, that is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance means that the cells become resistant to insulin. The cells become such that they don't allow insulin to enter. So in this case, cells will fail to derive energy from the glucose metabolism. They are not allowing the insulin to enter. So see, this is the diagram for insulin resistance. When we eat food, then the pancreas is making insulin. Now this insulin is trying to enter the cells, but cells are not allowing the insulin to enter. Now when the cells don't allow the insulin to enter, what is the function of insulin? Insulin converts glucose into glycogen. When cells are not allowing the insulin to enter, then glucose is not getting converted into glycogen. So this may cause high glucose levels in the cells. Cells are resisting insulin. Now what happens is high glucose, so high sugar is getting stored as fat. Sugar is getting stored as fat. It is not being utilized for energy production. And now since we don't have energy, we feel tired and hungry. The person will feel tired and hungry. And when the person is feeling tired and hungry, again the person will eat more food, which will lead to the pancreas making more insulin. Again the insulin is not acting as a source of energy for cells, because cells are not allowing the insulin to enter due to insulin resistance. And this leads to storage of more fat. The person goes on being obese. And because the person is not getting energy from food, energy from glucose, then the person feels more tired and hungry and again overeats. So this vicious cycle goes on. So this is what is insulin resistance. This occurs in case of type 2 diabetes. In type 2 diabetes, the cells may become resistant to insulin. Now see, people with obesity usually have insulin resistance in their body and brain. So people who are obese, the sugar is getting stored as fat. They mostly have insulin resistance in their body and brains. And researchers found signs of mitochondrial impairment in both the brains and livers of insulin resistant rats. So the author is suggesting that mitochondrial dysfunction. That mitochondrial dysfunction might be contributing to insulin resistance, because we saw that mitochondria and insulin are involved in a feedback loop with each other. So people with obesity usually have insulin resistance in their body and brains. Researchers found signs of mitochondrial impairment in both the brains and livers of insulin resistant rats. Now, what is insulin resistance? We have seen with the help of diagram. The person eats food. Pancreas responds by pumping out more insulin. If a little is not working, then it sends out a lot. Now see, pancreas is making insulin. This insulin is not able to work. Then pancreas is producing more insulin. But this, sometimes more insulin may help. But the problem is that higher levels of insulin may make the insulin resistance worse over time. So pancreas is producing more insulin, but that insulin cannot get into the cells. So it may make the insulin resistance even more. It may make it worse over time. And this, since the insulin and the glucose is not getting converted into glycogen, cells are resisting insulin, the sugar is getting stored as fat, so person is not deriving energy. Person is not deriving energy from the food, and now the person feels tired and hungry and eats more food. This is driving hunger and weight gain. And insulin resistance alone inhibits mitochondrial biogenesis. So insulin resistance, when cells become resistant to insulin, it can inhibit the mitochondrial biogenesis. That means it can inhibit the production of more mitochondria, and it can further add to the metabolic problem. Now we talk about exercise. Now physical activity and exercise, they lead to development of new neurons in the hippocampus in our brain from stem cells. So this is the brain. The hippocampus is located somewhere here. So exercise, hippocampus is a part of the limbic system. It is involved in conversion of short-term memory into long-term memory, and it is also involved in other functions. And it is part of the limbic system which is involved in the regulation of behavior and emotions. Now physical activity develops new neurons in the hippocampus from stem cells. Now stem cells are the cells from which the cells constituting all other organs in the body can be made. So stem cells can be converted into other types of cells. So when we perform physical activity, it leads to development of new neurons in the hippocampus from the stem cells. So development of new neurons will promote neuroplasticity, and it will improve our cognitive function. So exercise is directly related to, see, hippocampus is directly related to mood and cognitive disorders. If the new neurons are not getting developed in hippocampus, if there is a problem in the neurons of hippocampus, it may cause mood and cognitive disorders. Exercise is going to lead to an improvement. It is going to prevent the adverse effects. It is going to lead to cognitive improvement. Now, the growth of these stem cells into new neurons depends on the mitochondria. So how will the stem cells develop into new neurons? Mitochondria play an important role in that. If somebody has a poor mitochondrial function in the brain region, in this hippocampus, if somebody has poor mitochondrial function in the hippocampus, then this may prevent the person from getting the full benefits of exercise. So if someone has poor mitochondrial function in this brain region, that is the hippocampus, they may not get the same benefits from exercise that other people get. So benefits of exercise are also directly related to mitochondrial health. If the mitochondrial health is good, then you will derive more benefits from exercise. If the health of mitochondria in the hippocampus is not good, if the mitochondria are malfunctioning, then the person may not derive the same benefits from exercise as other persons are deriving. Now, exercise can help people maintain their current abilities, or it can improve their abilities. But asking people who are already metabolically compromised to push themselves, it involves risk. Because if you want to sometimes to derive benefits from exercise, we need to push ourselves, we need to exercise harder, we need to do a little bit extra. But if you ask somebody who is already metabolically compromised to push harder, then it may involve risk, it may cause a heart attack, it may cause injuries. So exercise for metabolically compromised people, it needs to be managed in a safe way. Now the challenge is, what is the challenge? It is getting people who are metabolically compromised to follow through with the routine of exercise. Because these people who are metabolically compromised, for example diabetics or some other persons having some psychiatric disorder, then they already are metabolically compromised and their metabolism is poor. It is causing them to lack energy and it is causing them to lack motivation. So because of their metabolism, they may not be able to follow through with the exercise routine. So we need to overcome that inertia. So how do we overcome it? It is possible with support, encouragement and education, but we need to go slower. Now, exercise as treatment. So how can you use exercise as treatment? People with chronic mental disorders may not notice the benefits of exercise right away because their metabolism is compromised. So their mitochondria are not functioning in a proper way. So it may block the benefits of exercise also. They may not receive the same benefits as other people are receiving. But it is important when taking exercise as a treatment, it is important to take an inventory of all those factors that may be impairing your mitochondria and metabolism. So we need to make a list of all the factors which are impairing our mitochondrial function. These factors may be hormones, they may be neuropeptides, they may be neurotransmitter imbalances, they may be alcohol or drugs, or they may be psychiatric medications. So we need to first consider all the factors that are impairing our metabolism, and we need to reduce and eliminate these factors. We need to first eliminate all the factors which are adversely impacting our metabolism. Now see, suppose we are taking alcohol, so we need to eliminate alcohol. Or if somebody is taking psychiatric medications, then that person needs to take, we cannot stop the psychiatric medications all of a sudden because these will cause withdrawal symptoms. And psychiatric medications sometimes are life saving also, they are essential. But if you want to reduce them, then you need to do it under medical supervision. You need to undertake other lifestyle interventions like diet changes or exercise, and then maybe you will need less of those psychiatric meds. So reducing or eliminating the other factors which are impairing metabolism, that will allow exercise to work. Because for exercise to work, you need to first ensure that your mitochondria are not malfunctioning. Mitochondrial malfunction might prevent the full benefits of exercise. So you need to address the other factors that are impairing your metabolism too. Now, for people with vitamin and hormone deficiency, if somebody is having a vitamin deficiency or a hormone deficiency, then exercise is not going to solve the problem. They need to be corrected with supplements or hormones, etc. But exercise certainly will not hurt in this case. Now, the author says that improving the function of mitochondria can prove beneficial in improving a person's improving the function of mitochondria can prove beneficial in both mental as well as metabolic disorders, because the author says that these mitochondria, they are the common pathway for mental and metabolic disorders. So even if somebody has certain deficiency like a vitamin or hormone deficiency, if you improve the mitochondrial function by whatever means, by lifestyle interventions or dietary changes, or then those people, they may they may improve their metabolic health and this might help them. But sometimes you need to make specific interventions in order to correct these deficiencies like vitamin or hormone deficiencies. Now we come to how the mitochondria respond to stress. Mitochondrial response to stress and the role of insulin. See, in the brain, Insulin plays a direct role in how the mitochondria respond to stress. So insulin is playing a direct role in how the mitochondria are responding to stress. If the insulin signaling is working properly, then mitochondria are going to respond to the stress effectively. Now, one way to stress mitochondria in mice is to feed them a high-fat diet. So you feed the mice high-fat diet, which usually leads to obesity and may stress the mitochondria. Now, researchers studied mice with insulin resistance. Now these mice already had insulin resistance and they were fed a high-fat diet. And this caused an impairment in the stress response in the mitochondria of these mice. And when the researchers they gave the mice intranasal insulin, then the mice started responding normally again, and the mice also interestingly they gained less weight. So this was about the research. Then another research group looked at the role of mitochondria in brain cells of mice who were given a high fat diet. Now these mice they were given a high fat diet, and the research group looked at the role of mitochondria in the brain cells. They found that the microglial cells they are the immune cells of the brain. They were causing brain inflammation. They were causing brain inflammation in response to high fat diet. So high fat diet was given, and this is the mice. In the brain of the mice, the microglial cells they caused inflammation in the brain of the mice. And this inflammation it occurred even before the mice gained any weight. And now the researchers found that what the mitochondria they were driving changes in microglial cells. Mitochondria were causing the microglial cells to cause brain inflammation. Also, there was an increase in a mitochondrial protein called as UCP2. There was an increase in this mitochondrial protein, and this increase in mitochondrial protein was driving changes in the mitochondrial dynamics, that is fission, fusion, movement, etc. So this mitochondrial protein was changing the mitochondrial dynamics, and this change in mitochondrial dynamics was causing these microglial cells in the brain of mice to cause brain inflammation. And this brain inflammation was in turn leading to obesity. And when researchers deleted this protein, UCP2, then the mice no longer had brain inflammation. And also they shockingly did not develop obesity. Even though they were given a high fat diet, they did not develop obesity. Why? Because this mitochondrial protein, which was directly playing a role in causing the microglial cells to cause brain inflammation and obesity, this protein was deleted. So when this protein was deleted, the mice did not develop obesity, even though they were given a high fat diet. Even though they continued to have access to high fat diet. Instead, when this protein was deleted, the mice ended up eating less and they were burning more calories. So this shows that mitochondria were causing these microglial cells to cause brain inflammation and obesity. So mitochondria play a role in obesity. Mitochondria play a role in stress response. And insulin plays a direct role in how the mitochondria respond to stress. Now we come to two other studies. They confirm a direct role of mitochondria in brain cells in the regulation of feeding behaviors. So mitochondria in the brain cells, they are playing a direct role in the regulation of feeding behaviors, obesity, and leptin resistance. Now, what is leptin resistance? It is a condition in which the brain is not responding normally to leptin. So leptin resistance is a condition in which the brain does not respond normally to leptin, which is a hormone regulating hunger, energy and motivation. Now researchers, they showed a direct role of mitochondria in both brain inflammation and obesity. Now the mitochondria playing a direct role in brain inflammation as well as in obesity. We just saw how the mitochondria are playing a direct role. There was this mitochondrial protein called as UCP2, which was causing changes in mitochondrial dynamics, and it was affecting the microglial cells to cause brain inflammation in mice in response to high fat diet, which in turn was leading to obesity. So researchers showed a direct role of mitochondria in brain inflammation as well as in obesity. However, they interfered with what the mitochondria were normally doing. So they interfered with what the mitochondria were doing. How? They deleted the protein UCP2, which was causing changes in mitochondrial dynamics and which was making the changes in mitochondrial dynamics were in turn making the microglial cells cause brain inflammation. So they deleted this protein. They interfered with what the mitochondria were normally doing. So one way to look at this study is to think that the microglial cells, that is the immune cells in the brain, they were dysfunctional. These microglial cells, they were causing brain inflammation, and researchers, they prevented these cells from making a mistake. So the researchers, they deleted this protein which was causing these microglial cells to cause inflammation. Then another way is that the mitochondria, they were instead receiving some erroneous signals from somewhere else in the body. So they might have been receiving signals, the mitochondria in the brain, they might have been receiving signals from the gut. The high fat diet was fed to the mice, and this affected their gut, and the gut sent signals to the mitochondria in the brain. So the mitochondria were receiving erroneous signals from somewhere else in the body, that is from the gut microbiome, or they were receiving some erroneous signals from the liver, and or maybe it was because of insulin resistance. Maybe it was the insulin resistance that was causing the mitochondria to act in that way, that was causing the brain inflammation. Or another way to look at this is that the mitochondria were only doing their work. They were doing exactly what they were programmed to do. They are programmed to, whenever there is stress, suppose in this case due to high fat diet, then it is the duty of the mitochondria to send signals. So in this case, they send signals to the microglial cells. And the microglial cells in turn caused inflammation in response to the high fat diet. So they were doing, and this inflammation, and finally it led to obesity. So mitochondria were doing exactly what they were programmed to do. They may actually have been looking for the long-term health of the organism. So the mitochondria might have been looking for the long-term health of the organism. Maybe obesity was good for the long-term health in these circumstances because there was a stressor in the form of high fat diet. So in this case, maybe obesity was a natural reaction. It was a part of the body's defense mechanism, or inflammation was a natural reaction which was a part of the body's defense mechanism. So we can't be certain that preventing inflammation or obesity in this case would have led to better health outcomes or longevity. Now, high fat diet can contain unhealthy ingredients like sucrose also. But then there is a different type of high fat diet that results in weight loss and lower levels of inflammation. So there are certain high fat diets which which result in weight loss and which cause lower levels of inflammation. So the ketogenic diet is an example of such a high fat diet which is causing lower levels of inflammation and which is resulting in weight loss. So some high fat diets can be harmful, they may contain lot of sucrose, but other high fat diets like the ketogenic diet can cause weight loss and can cause lower levels of inflammation. So it is not the fat per se that is causing inflammation. It is not the fat per se that is causing a reduction in the mitochondrial health. Other factors like sucrose are playing a role. Now we come to fasting, starvation and eating disorders. Now see, intermittent fasting has been found to improve the metabolic health. It has been found to improve the functioning of mitochondria. It has been found to promote autophagy, mitophagy, and improve cell maintenance. So autophagy means the cell repairing itself, the cell replacing the damaged cell parts, the cell recycling its damaged cell parts. Mitophagy means the mitochondria repairing itself. So intermittent fasting has benefits. Intermittent fasting is of many types. One may be, it means fasting with breaks. So first type is when you eat for 8 to 12 hours a day and then you undertake a break in your eating. And second is when you eat one meal a day. Or the third type of intermittent fasting is when you restrict nighttime eating, when you don't eat at night. So first is you're eating in the interval of 8 to 12 hours during the day, and after that you are undertaking a fast. Second is you're eating one meal a day, or you are restricting nighttime eating. So in the eating of when you restrict eating to 8 to 12 hours in the day, then suppose you restrict eating to 8 to 12 hours, then you sleep early. And before you sleep, you take your dinner early. Suppose you take it at suppose 7 o'clock, and then in the morning till about 11 or 12 o'clock you don't eat. So there is a fasting period of nearly 16 hours. So this 8 or 16-hour fasts are part of intermittent fasting. Now, for growing children, frequent eating helps. When children eat frequently, it helps them grow. But for adults, if they eat all the time, then it is going to harm their metabolic health. Now, fasting is going to increase autophagy. Autophagy means the cell replacing old and defective parts and recycling old and defective parts, repairing itself. Fasting is going to increase autophagy and it has got a tremendous healing potential. Now the body, when you fast, the body is going to tap the fat stores. Each cell is going to respond and mitochondria will direct the things. Mitochondria will change shape, they will elongate, they will fuse with each other and they will form long tubular networks. Now mitochondria, they are going to fuse, mitochondria are going to fuse with each other, then they will form these long tubular networks and the cells will identify their defective proteins, they will identify their defective cell parts and these will get recycled. These defective proteins and cell parts will be shuttled to the lysosomes. We know that lysosome is an organelle of the cell which is involved in disposal of the waste products. So these proteins and cell parts will be shuttled to lysosomes for degradation. And these nutrients will then get recycled. Some of them will be used for energy production and others will be used for producing new essential proteins and cell parts. So it is essentially like the reboot of the cell. Old parts, defective parts will get recycled. They are shuttled to lysosomes for degradation. Nutrients will get recycled. Some of them will get used for energy. Others may be used for producing new essential proteins and cell parts. Then the cells, the mitochondria in the cells, that is the defective mitochondria, The defective mitochondria will get recycled. So the mitochondria will repair itself through mitophagy. But a healthy mitochondria, they are working with each other, they are fusing with each other and they have formed long tubular networks. And these healthy mitochondria, they, by means of these long tubular networks, they are not getting recycled. So the long networks are protecting them from getting recycled, and these mitochondria, the healthy mitochondria, are keeping up the pace of energy production. Now when the person eats again, the cell parts that got destroyed, they get replaced. When you eat again, the destroyed cell parts will get replaced, and these new parts, the replacement parts, will be new and healthy and will include new mitochondria. However, if people stay without food for too long, then it can lead to starvation. And because the body will lower its metabolism broadly to conserve energy. So starvation is definitely not good for health. Now we come to the gut microbiome. Now, gut involves the alimentary canal from the mouth right up to the anus. But the gut microbiome mainly includes the microbes in the intestines. So it is the role of the bacteria in the gut. Now the gut bacteria, they get the first dibs on all the food that we eat. And the gut bacteria, they produce a variety of metabolites, neurotransmitters, hormones that they secrete into our guts. So this is our intestine, the large intestine. And there is this small intestine here. So gut bacteria are going to produce a variety of hormones, neurotransmitters that they secrete into our guts. Bacteria are present here, they are secreting all these hormones and neurotransmitters into our guts. And these hormones, metabolites, neurotransmitters, they get absorbed into our guts. So these hormones or neurotransmitters are getting absorbed into the gut, and they are in turn affecting our metabolism and brain function. Then second way that signals get sent, the second way that the signals get sent from the gut to the brain, it is through hormones and neuropeptides that are produced in the cells lining the intestinal tract. So this is the intestine, the large intestine. And here is the small intestine. Now, this is the intestine. There are cells that are lining the intestinal tract, and these cells produce hormones or neuropeptides, and these hormones and neuropeptides are acting as signals. They are sending signals. They are acting as signals to the brain, and these hormones, neuropeptides travel throughout the body, including the brains, and have widespread effect on our metabolism. Then gut has also its own nervous system that communicates directly with the brain, and vice versa. The vagus nerve, it plays a direct role in this communication. Now, there is also evidence that the microbes in the gut microbes, we have already seen that they are producing neurotransmitters, hormones, etc. They also send signals directly to the mitochondria in the cells that are lining the gut. So in these cells which are lining the gut microbes, suppose these are the microbes in the gut, they are sending signals to these cells that are lining, they are sending signals directly to the mitochondria in these cells that are lining the gut and immune cells. So they are sending signals to the cells that are lining the gut, and as well as they are sending signals to the immune cells. And these signals have been shown to change mitochondrial metabolism, and they have been shown to alter the barrier function of gut cells. Now, what is the barrier function of gut cells? Now, what happens is that the cells lining the gut, they only allow the essential molecules to enter, to penetrate, and they block the waste products. They block the non-essential molecules, and these waste products are thrown out of the body. Now when the gut becomes leaky, then the non-essential molecules also seep in, and this can cause metabolic abnormalities. So the barrier function is that they act as a barrier to the non-essential molecules. They stop the toxic molecules from entering the gut cells, and they ensure that toxic molecules are thrown out. This is the barrier function of gut cells. So gut microbes are sending signals to the mitochondria in the cells lining the gut and immune cells, and these signals are shown to change the mitochondrial metabolism as well as alter the barrier function of gut cells. And these signals can also lead to inflammation. Now, we have already seen what is the gut barrier. It is a semi-permeable structure that protects the body from harmful microbes, viruses, food antigens, and environmental toxins, while allowing essential nutrients to pass through. Now we come to the next heading, that is food fasting and gut microbiome as treatments. How do we use them as treatments? There are 8 different ways in which dietary interventions can help in addressing mental symptoms. Now, what are these ways? First is addressing nutritional deficiencies like deficiency of folate, that is vitamin B9, vitamin B12, or thiamine deficiency. Second is removing the dietary allergens or toxins. For example, some people have an autoimmune disorder called celiac disease that results in inflammation, and this celiac disease is caused due to metabolic problems in response to gluten. Now, if you don't take in the foodstuffs that contain gluten, then it means you are removing the dietary allergen or toxin, and it will improve the symptoms. It will help in restoring metabolic health. Then trans fatty acids. We have just read about trans fats. They are harmful fats, and if you don't take them in your food, if you remove trans fats from your food, then it can improve mitochondrial function. And if you eat trans fats in your food, it can impair the mitochondrial function. Then next intervention is eating a healthy diet, for example, Mediterranean diet, or as we are going to see in the later slides, a ketogenic diet. So eating healthy diet can promote metabolic health. Mediterranean diet, it includes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, etc. Then exploring fasting, intermittent fasting, or fasting mimicking diets. Now, if you explore fasting as an option, because fasting is going to stimulate autophagy, mitophagy, and fasting mimicking diet, the most important example of the fasting mimicking diet which has even been tried and which has given results, according to Dr. Christopher Palmer, is the ketogenic diet. So this ketogenic diet is a diet which mimics fasting. So it ensures that the person does not starve, but it is mimicking the fasting state. So exploring these diets can stimulate autophagy, mitophagy. Now, fifth, improving the gut microbiome. So how can you improve the gut microbiome? Avoid antibiotic exposure, avoid junk foods, avoid highly processed foods. Eat foods that are high in fiber. For example, fruits, vegetables, and a diet of real whole foods. Or you eat probiotics. Now, probiotics are foods that contain beneficial microbes. But before taking probiotics, you need to look into the evidence of their effectiveness. Or sometimes fecal microbial transplant can also help, but this is experimental at this point. Then sixth way in which food fasting and gut microbiome can act as treatments is by improving metabolism and mitochondria with a dietary intervention. So how? Changes in insulin resistance, changes in metabolic rate. Dietary intervention can lead to changes in number of mitochondria in cells, in the overall health of mitochondria, in changes in hormonal imbalance, in changes in inflammation and other regulators of metabolism. Then metabolic disorders like obesity, they can be corrected by dietary interventions that reduce weight. Then for underweight people, there are dietary interventions for gaining weight. So these are certain methods by which food fasting and gut microbiomes can act as treatments. Now next is that there is evidence that fasting, intermittent fasting and fasting mimicking diets like the ketogenic diet may play a role in treating mental disorders because they result in the production of ketone bodies which are made when fat is being used as an energy source. So when fat is being used as an energy source, then it leads to production of ketone bodies. And this process of conversion of fat into ketone bodies, when fat is used as an energy source, the conversion of fat into ketone bodies, this process it occurs in the mitochondria. This process occurs in the mitochondria. Now ketones, the fat is being turned into ketones, and these ketones, they act as an alternate energy source. They act as an alternate source for energy to the cells. Now suppose the cells in the brain, they are already insulin resistant. They are not letting insulin enter into them. But ketones can get into these cells easily. So it helps overcome the problem of insulin resistance also. These ketones, they serve as important signaling molecules. They serve as important signaling molecules resulting in epigenetic changes. So these ketones are resulting in changes in gene expression, that is turning of genes on or off. Then ketones can be a rescue energy source to insulin resistant brain cells. While glucose may have trouble getting into these cells, ketones can get inside easily. Now fasting, we know it results in autophagy. That is the cell replacing its old and damaged parts and repairing itself. Now, how does this intermittent fasting promote brain health? It reduces oxidative stress. It improves autophagy and it results in production of more mitochondria. It increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Now, what is this BDNF? It is a protein that helps the nerve cells to survive, grow, and differentiate. This protein is helping the nerve cells to grow, to survive, and to differentiate. It is found in the brain and spinal cord and plays a role in a lot of functions like learning and memory, in neuroprotection, that is protecting against neurodegenerative diseases, in mood. It is involved in mood related disorders. It is studied in relation to neuropsychiatric disorders. And it is also playing a role in other functions. It is helping maintain mature neurons in response to stress. And BDNF levels are varying in healthy people, and changes in the levels of BDNF is associated with aging and psychiatric disease. And interventions like exercise as well as antidepressants that can increase BDNF expression. So fasting is also increasing BDNF expression. And BDNF, we know it is present in the brain. It is found in brain and spinal cord, and it is a protein that helps nerve cells to grow, to differentiate, and to survive. It is involved in learning and memory, in neuroprotection, in mood, and in other functions like response to stress, etc. And changes in these levels of this protein are associated with psychiatric diseases and aging. Now, intermittent fasting also improves neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the nerve cells to grow and differentiate. So it results in cognitive improvement. Then intermittent fasting can promote a better stress response, promote cellular stress response. So cells will be able to respond to stress more effectively because of the benefits of intermittent fasting. Now we know that prolonged fasting, it can lead to starvation. So a kind of diet was designed which will mimic the fasting stage. It will mimic the fasting state, and it will not allow the person to starve while at the same time giving the benefits of fasting. So this kind of diet is the ketogenic diet. So fasting mimicking diets can replicate the benefits of fasting for longer periods without the risk of starvation. there is evidence that intermittent fasting, it improves mood as well as cognition. It protects the neurons from damage. And this evidence has been found in animal models of epilepsy and Alzheimer's disease. And so how does intermittent fasting, why is it improving mood and cognition? Because there is this common pathway of mitochondria. It is promoting the mitochondrial health. It is promoting mitochondrial biogenesis. Now, when researchers put mice on the intermittent fasting routine, they found that hippocampus, a brain region often involved in depression, anxiety, and memory disorders, it was deriving the improvements from intermittent fasting. So the brain region called hippocampus, it was deriving the benefits from intermittent fasting. And this appeared to be primarily due to high levels of GABA activity. So GABA, we know, it acts as inhibitory. It inhibits the hyperactive cells. So it reduces hyperexcitability in the cells, and it has an anti-anxiety effect and an anti-psychotic effect. So this appeared to be primarily due to high levels of GABA activity. So intermittent fasting is promoting high levels of GABA activity, and which is reducing hyperexcitability. So this is reducing depression, anxiety, and memory disorders. Now when the researchers, they removed a protein called sirtuin-3. This protein is essential for mitochondrial health. So when they removed this protein associated with mitochondria from the mice, then the benefits of intermittent fasting were lost. So this means that the benefits of intermittent fasting were occurring through the mitochondria. So the mitochondria were the common pathway through which the benefits of intermittent fasting were occurring. The mitochondria were involved, they were acting as the common pathway through which the intermittent fasting was giving benefits. So as soon as the mitochondrial function was impaired, that is, this protein from mitochondria was removed, so the benefits of intermittent fasting were lost. Now we come to the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet provides an alternative fuel source which can be a lifeline to the insulin-resistant brain cells. Now this diet can cause changes in neurotransmitter levels. It can regulate calcium channels. It can reduce inflammation. It can improve the gut microbiome, increase the overall metabolic rate, reduce insulin resistance itself. It can induce both mitophagy and mitochondrial biogenesis. So these are the benefits of ketogenic diet. It can cause the mitochondria to repair themselves. It can cause the formation of new mitochondria. It can reduce insulin resistance, because the insulin may have trouble getting into the cell. The cells may have resistance to insulin, but ketones can get into these cells easily. And ketones, we know, they are produced from fat as a result of eating the ketogenic diet. So when we have the ketogenic diet, when we eat the ketogenic diet, the fat gets converted into ketones. So the fat gets converted into ketones, and this process occurs in the mitochondria. So when fat is used as an energy source, it gets converted into ketones, and this process occurs in the mitochondria. So the ketones can easily get into the cells and act as an energy source. So it is reducing insulin resistance. It is increasing the metabolism. It is improving the metabolism. It is improving the gut microbiome as well. It is regulating calcium channels. So it is regulating the off switch in the cells. It is reducing hyperexcitability. And it is changing the neurotransmitter levels. Now, after people are on this diet for months or years, their cells will have more healthy mitochondria, and this can result in long-term healing. And many people can stop this diet after 2 to 5 years and remain well. But here is a point to note that when initially you start a metabolic intervention like the ketogenic diet, then initially it may cause the symptoms to worsen, because sometimes it may cause hyperexcitability in some cells, and this may lead to worsening of the symptoms. But over a longer period of time, it will result in production of more healthy mitochondria, and it will improve the metabolic health of the person. Now, research for the diet's efficacy in treating mental health disorders, it is in early stages. Now, Dr. Chris Palmer, Harvard psychiatrist, has seen people with severe treatment-resistant psychotic disorders. So, Dr. Chris Palmer has seen people having severe treatment-resistant psychotic disorders, and they have achieved full remission of their symptoms over long periods of time through the ketogenic diet. So, this shows that ketogenic diet is changing the lives of many people. It is giving them relief from the problems caused by the psychiatric disorders. So people have even achieved full remission of their symptoms. Now, effects of this diet in the first year, they are like a medication. Now, if you take this ketogenic diet, then you need to remain on this diet religiously. You can't stop this diet. You cannot stop it. You can't stop it for cheat days, because it is working just like a medication. And just as when you stop taking a psychiatric medication, it results in withdrawal symptoms. So in the same way, when you stop taking this diet, it will cause withdrawal symptoms, and the symptoms can worsen. So you need to follow this diet religiously. Now, this diet, it was earlier used as a treatment for epilepsy, and it is common to use epilepsy treatments in psychiatry. We use many of them for almost all types of mental disorders. There are several clinical trials for bipolar disorder and schizophrenia getting underway currently. Now, ketogenic diets have led to improvements in symptoms of Alzheimer's disease also. And it has proved to be more effective than intranasal insulin, because intranasal insulin is only stopping the progression of the disease. But ketogenic diets have even been able to reverse the disease. As we saw that some people have achieved remission of their mental illness because of consuming the ketogenic diet, because of religiously following the ketogenic diet. Dr. Chris Palmer, in his book Brain Energy, he gives an example of a woman who had been suffering from schizoaffective disorder for a long part, from schizophrenia for a long part of her life. And at an older age, she started following the ketogenic diet, and after being on the ketogenic diet, she achieved remission of the symptoms of her mental illness for around 15 years, and the symptoms did not occur till her death. So this shows how effective this diet was. Now, there are many versions of this ketogenic diet. Ketogenic diet for weight loss, ketogenic diet for diabetes management, ketogenic diet for management of epilepsy, and they don't always have the same effects. The foods can also be tailored to personal preferences, such as vegetarian, vegan, meat only, that is the carnivore diet, or a diet with both animal and plant source foods. But those who are suffering from medical and mental disorders, they should only do this diet with medical supervision, because there are risks and side effects involved. And prescription medications need to be adjusted and stopped safely, because when you are on this diet, when you are following this diet religiously, then it will improve your metabolic health, and you will start no longer needing the medications in the same dose. So you may need to reduce the doses of the medications. And this has to be done under medical supervision only. Now, low levels of vitamins and other factors, they may simply be a consequence of mitochondrial dysfunction and not the cause of it. So mitochondrial dysfunction might cause low levels of vitamins and other factors. So adding more vitamins and other factors may not solve the problem. So what can solve the problem? Dietary interventions, good sleep, stress reduction, removing the mitochondrially impairing medications, or exercise. These are certain interventions that can actually solve the problem. But if you reduce medications or remove medications, you need to do it only under medical supervision, because removing or reducing medications abruptly, it can lead to resurgence of symptoms. It can make the symptoms worsen. It can cause withdrawal symptoms. So pills containing vitamins and supplements don't automatically stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis or mitophagy. Vitamins, if you take a pill for which is containing vitamin or supplement, they will not help in mitochondrial improvement in mitochondrial health. Instead, dietary interventions, good sleep, stress reduction, removing the mitochondrial impairing medications and exercise, they can actually help in improving the mitochondrial health. Now, how to design a treatment plan? So how to design a treatment plan? First, you take help from a medical practitioner. Then there should be thorough medical evaluation to reveal the factors that are playing a role in your illness. Suppose somebody is having a mental disorder, then you need to have a thorough medical evaluation and list the factors that are actually playing a role in your illness, and take the doctor's help to develop a metabolic treatment plan. Now these metabolic interventions, they can have 4 types of effects on the body and brain. First is initiation. When you first make the change, this can abruptly shift your metabolism. When you first make the change, it can lead to abrupt shift in your metabolism. Sometimes it can be helpful, but other times it can even make things worse. For example, when you suddenly make any change, lifestyle change, then it can sometimes make things worse also. For example, you are starting when you provide more energy to the cells initially, some of them may become hyperexcitable. So when you start a dietary intervention, initially you may notice some adverse effects. Sometimes your symptoms may worsen also initially, because the diet may provide more energy, and increased energy may increase hyperexcitability. So when you start a ketogenic diet initially, it may cause hyperexcitability, and it can make the symptoms worsen also. But over time, the symptoms will improve. Over time, the health will improve. So this is the initiation phase. When you first make the change, this can abruptly shift your metabolism. Sometimes this can be helpful, but at other times it can also make things worse, at least initially. Initially, it may make things worse. Then comes the adaptation phase. When you make a metabolic change, your body will work to adapt to that change. Body will try to adapt. And these adaptations are usually designed to counteract the effects of metabolic intervention. These adaptations are designed to counter the metabolic intervention, counter the effect of that intervention. The body will try to fight it off. But these adaptations, they usually don't negate the intervention totally. They don't totally negate the effects, but they will often lessen the effects of that intervention compared to the initiation phase. Then comes the maintenance phase. In this phase, at some point your metabolism will become fully adapted to the intervention. So at some point your metabolism fully adapts to the new intervention, and your body and brain feel more stable. So this is the stable phase. And in this phase, once you are in the maintenance phase, you can also think of increasing the dose of the intervention, which will then take you back to the initiation and adaptation phases again. Then about withdrawal. If you quickly stop any metabolic interventions, abruptly stop, suppose you initiated on a ketogenic diet, you abruptly stop taking it, then there may be worsening of symptoms, there may be withdrawal reaction. Or suppose you start taking a psychiatric medication, but later on you abruptly stop that medication, then it will cause a withdrawal reaction. Metabolism will often rebound too high or too low in these situations, and this can cause withdrawal symptoms. So it is wrong to abruptly stop a metabolic intervention. And all these above stages, all these situations can happen with almost all treatments that include medications, light therapy, changes in diet, changes in the gut microbiome, supplement use, and even psychological and social interventions. Now we come to what are certain keto-friendly options. What are certain keto-friendly options which can form part of a ketogenic diet? Although people with mental disorders, they need to do this diet only under medical supervision. But ketogenic diet, as we saw, it has got certain different versions. One version for weight loss, another for diabetes, another for other disorders, etc. So keto-friendly options include meat, then canned meat, fish. Now fish is a source of omega-3 fatty acid, which is a polyunsaturated fatty acid, which is an essential fatty acid. It is promoting high density, it is a high density lipoprotein. It is good for the body. Then seafood, eggs. Eggs are also a keto-friendly option. Then plant-based proteins like tofu, black soya bean, etc. Then low-carb vegetables that are growing above ground. They are certain keto-friendly options. Now these vegetables include broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, celery, you call it ajwain in Hindi, cucumber, eggplant, fennel or sauf, then green beans, greens of all types, leeks. Now leeks are similar to onion. Then lettuces of all types, mushrooms, okra, onion, pepper, pumpkin, which we call as kaddu in Hindi, radish, shallots. Shallots are also somewhat similar to they are similar to hara pyaj. We call it hara pyaj in Hindi. Then spinach, sprouts, squash is somewhat similar to cucumber. Then sugar snap peas, tomatoes, turnips, zucchinis again similar to cucumber. Then you should base your keto meals on meat, poultry, fish, eggs. You base it on these proteins and other protein rich foods. Then you consume leafy greens, non-starchy vegetables and salad. You should avoid sugary and starchy foods. So please avoid sugary and starchy foods. Drink water, tea or coffee. But in the tea or coffee, ideally use no sweeteners, especially sugar. Don't use sugar or don't use any sweeteners. Then you can add fat. So what fat can you add? Like nut oils. These include coconut oil, olive oil. We saw that olive oil is an example of monounsaturated fatty acid, which is beneficial for the body. Then avocado, sesame, which is called as til in Hindi, hazelnut, walnut is also called akhrout. Then almond. Then there are non-dairy fats, which include lard. It is the fatty tissue of a pig. Then ghee, tallow, duck fat, coconut milk, coconut cream, etc. Then dairy. Dairy products include butter, cream, sour cream, heavy cream, cream cheese, cottage cheese, etc. Then full fat salad dressing. So full fat salad dressing includes all this ranch, blue cheese, etc. Then full fat cheeses, then sauces. Then what to drink? Water, tea or coffee. Tea or coffee is fine, but it should not contain any sugar or sweeteners. Then a splash of milk or cream in your coffee or tea is okay, but beware that the carbs can add up if you drink multiple cups in a day. So don't drink multiple cups in a day. Then what should you avoid in a ketogenic diet? What should you avoid? You should avoid bread, muffins, pancakes, etc. Avoid cereals. Avoid pasta and rice. Avoid cakes, cookies, and other baked goods. Avoid sugar and anything that is made with sugar. So avoid sugar and anything that is made with sugar. Avoid even fruit juices are prohibited. So most fruits and fruit juices are also prohibited in a strict ketogenic diet. Highly processed foods obviously are prohibited. You cannot eat junk food. Then this is about the ketogenic diet, the composition. It limits carbohydrates. It limits carbohydrates to 20 or fewer grams of net carbohydrates a day. So it is limiting carbohydrates to, to less than 20 grams of carbohydrates a day. And for protein, you should eat enough to meet your needs. Most people need at least 70 grams per day. And 20 to 35% of calories are derived from protein. And fat. In case of fat, in a keto diet, about 60 to 70% of your calories, they come from fat. Add enough fat to add flavor. So add enough fat to add flavor. There is no reason to add lots of fat unless you need extra calories. So there is no reason to add lots of fat unless you need extra calories from fat. Many whole foods like eggs and meat, they contain plenty of fat. And in a ketogenic diet, about 60 to 70% of your calories, they come from fat. Now, these are certain websites from which you can get information about the ketogenic diet. One is the dietdoctor.com, another is metabolicmind.com, and another site is lifestyleparivartan.com. From all these sites you can get information about the ketogenic diet. Now Dr. Christopher Palmer has seen that many patients suffering from serious mental disorders, in cases where the psychiatric medications they were not proving to be effective. In those cases, starting those patients on a ketogenic diet, when these patients adopted a ketogenic diet, then their metabolic health improved, and many of these patients even achieved full remission from their mental illness. Full remission was also achieved. For example, Dr. Palmer gives an example of a patient suffering from schizoaffective disorder who was having delusions and hallucinations. And when that person started on the ketogenic diet, then the hallucinations and delusions they went away. This person was earlier having paranoia, and when that person was started on a ketogenic diet, his symptoms improved and he started functioning normally again. Then Dr. Palmer talks about a lady who had schizophrenia, who had a psychiatric disorder for most of her life. She had schizophrenia for most of her life, but after she started on a ketogenic diet, then for around 15 years, her symptoms went away. Till her death, she never experienced any symptoms of that psychiatric illness. So she, in a way, achieved full remission from the symptoms of her psychiatric condition, psychiatric illness, of her mental illness. So this is definitely a path-breaking intervention. Although the research is in its early stages, but still the beneficial effects that it is having on a large number of patients, it shows that this is definitely offering new hope in the field of psychiatry, and hence this kind of intervention, it should be promoted, and the benefits should be seen as if it is benefiting. If more people start deriving benefits from this diet, then this can definitely prove to be revolutionary in the mental health field. So with this we come to the end of this lecture series regarding the summary of the book Brain Energy by Dr. Christopher Palmer. Hope you benefit from this lecture series, and with this we come to the end of this lecture series. Thank you.